Hi, I'm James Pearson, Chief Instructor at Hamble School of Yachting. What we're going to look at now is how we take the yachts from a wind-on pontoon by using a spring. What's happening here is that the wind's holding the boat onto the pontoon. So what we need to effectively do is to lever the boat off the pontoon and into the wind. So what we're going to do is set up a spring line to achieve that. There's two ways of springing off the boat. We can either spring out the bow or we can spring out the stern. Now, depending which way we're going to leave the pontoon will depend on which spring we're going to use. Now, when we're deciding which way we're to leave the pontoon, the key thing to remember is that we always try to leave so that we're heading into the tide. So we can check to see what the tide's doing right on our location by having a look over the side of the boat. So we're looking for telltale signs from the seaweed, anything floating down the river there. Once we've decided which way we want to leave, and in this case we're going to be using a stern spring, okay, so we're going to be levering out the bow away from the pontoon and then driving ahead to leave the pontoon. So we're going to need to set up a stern spring slip. So this stern spring slip is going to go from our stern fair lead forward, leading forward, so that as we reverse against this, it anchors that corner of the boat. In effect, what we're doing there is we're creating a lever between that stern fair lead and our propeller. So as we drive against it, it will lever the bow up and away from the pontoon. Once we've levered the bow out and away from the pontoon, what we're going to be thinking about is getting the bow as far away as we can, so that as we leave, we're then driving into that breeze. Now, generally, the tide will run along the pontoon. So as soon as we start to lever our bow out and away from the pontoon, that tidal effect will also start to help us pushing on what will be the leeward bow, the bow side of the bow downwind. That in effect will then start to push us away from the pontoon and will then help us to leave. Right then, so as we spring off this pontoon and we lever the bow out, okay, so we're creating this lever between our stern quarter and our propeller. So we're driving this part of the boat back towards the pontoon over there. Now, as we do that, the stern's going to come into contact with the pontoon. So it's really important that we get as many fenders as we can back in this kind of area. Likewise, if we're driving forwards against a bow spring, we'd move our fenders up towards the bow. So there we are. So we're now set up with a bow slip and a stern spring slip ready to go. We've got our fenders positioned nicely. The breeze is still pinning us on, so the spring is still the best move. The tide is still ebbing. Everything's as planned. The slipping order that we'll go through is we'll slip the bow line. Okay, nothing should happen at that point. As soon as you've slipped that, if you come back, and we'll then prepare to slip the spring once we've levered the bow off the pontoon. Okay, so what I'm doing now is we've just got that stern spring rigged, is I'm going to drive a stern against it, so the line's going to become taut. As I mentioned, that's going to anchor the port quarter of the boat there. And our lever's actually going to be from this point here to our propeller, which is roughly about here. Okay, so this is the length of our lever, and we're going to swing the boat off the pontoon. So here goes. I'm just going to progressively add power as I go astern now. So if you hold on to that spring line there, okay, and we can see that the bow's already began to come away from the pontoon there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim to get the bow around about 45 degrees off the pontoon here. So there it is. Now, as my bow's coming out, all I'm going to do is going to select neutral. Now at this point, I'm going to straighten my wheel and then drive ahead. So the key thing I'm looking at here is I'm making sure that that line's clear of the water. Okay, because what I don't want to do is turn the stern onto it and end up fouling the prop. As I came away from the pontoon, the stern of the boat didn't pivot onto the pontoon.